Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order in Council Chambers at 6 p.m. Do not believe we have any remote electronic attendance, correct? Right. So we move to a plethora of appointments and reappointments, which, Ms. Kostopoulos, I do have to read every single one of them out loud, so they're official, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
First is Mayor's reappointment of D. Reynolds to the Library Board for a full 3-year term to expire May 31, 2026. Mayor's reappointment of Bob Poor to the Library Board for a full 3-year term to expire May 31, 2026. Mayor's reappointment of Regina Nelson to the Library Board for a full 3-year term to expire May 31, 2026. Mayor's reappointment of Rick Jennings to the Police Pension Fund Board for a full 2-year term to expire April 30th, 2025. Mayor's reappointment of Jeff Nelson to the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners for a full 3-year term to expire May 31st, 2026. Mayor's reappointment of Daniel Williams to the Moline Park and Recreation Board for a full 5-year term to expire May 31st, 2028. Mayor's appointment of Mark Harpel to the Plan Commission to fill the unexpired term of Bill Fitzsimmons expiring June 30th, 2027. Mayor's appointment of Debbie Murphy, Moline City Council First Ward Alderperson, to the Keep Moline Beautiful Commission as City Council Representative, concurrent with their aldermanic term. Mayor's appointment of Anna Castro, Moline City Council 7th Ward Alderperson, to the Project Management Team as City Council Representative, concurrent with their aldermanic term. Mayor's appointment of James Patrick Schmidt, Moline City Council Alderperson at Large, to the Project Management Team as City Council Representative, concurrent with their aldermanic term. Mayor's appointment of Pat O'Brien, Moline City Council 6th Ward Alderperson, to the Rock Island County Waste Management Agency and Bi-State Regional Commission as City Council Representative, concurrent with their aldermanic term. Mayor's appointment of Jessica Finch, Moline City Council 5th Ward Alderperson, to the Moline Park and Recreation Board as City Council Representative, concurrent with their aldermanic term. Mayor's appointment of Abdul Razak, Moline City Council 3rd Ward Alderperson, to the Library Board and the Moline Community Development Corporation Board as the City Council Representative, concurrent with their aldermanic term. Mayor's appointment of Alvaro Macias, Moline City Council 2nd Ward Alderperson, to the Moline Center Main Street Commission as City Council Representative, concurrent with their aldermanic term. And thank you all for stepping up and representing us in all of these places. Very much appreciated. Proclamations. We move to. Our first one is a proclamation from Darren Galt, Chief of Police, to observe the week of May 14th to 2023 as National Police Week. The proclamation, do you want to say anything first?
Thank you, Mayor. Annually, the nation recognizes our fallen officers and police officers doing a very tough job around the country every year in May. And, I really appreciate the City Council and the Mayor recognizing Police Week even locally. Sometimes tragedy does strike close to home. Last year, Nicholas Wiest was killed, the Knox County deputy chasing a wanted individual, was killed just south of the Quad Cities, north of Galesburg on Route 150. So we're not immune to violence in our communities, police officers that give the ultimate sacrifice for our communities. And our police officers, and many of them are here tonight to recognize that you will also value their service to our community to keep them safe. I think they do a wonderful job. I think you have the best police department in Quad Cities. We're trying to be the best police department in the region, if not the nation, leading from the front and being innovative and also caring about our community. And they just do a fabulous job, a wonderful job, and I know you see that. And so things like this are very wonderful for us to hear. So thank you very much.
Thank you. The proclamation reads, whereas in 1962, President Kennedy proclaimed May 15 as National Peace Officers Memorial Day and the calendar week in which May 15 falls as National Police Week. And whereas, established by a joint resolution of Congress in 1962, National Police Week pays special recognition to those law enforcement officers who have lost their lives in the line of duty for the safety and protection of others. And whereas each day, more than 900,000 police officers across our country put on their badge and go to work knowing they may face extremely dangerous situations, with 245 officers giving their lives in the line of duty last year. And whereas the men and women of the Moline Police Department make difficult decisions every day to safeguard the rights and freedoms of the citizens of Moline and provide a vital public service, now therefore, I, Sangeeta Rayapati, Mayor of Moline, do hereby call upon all citizens of Moline and upon all patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 14 to 20, 2023 as National Police Week, with appropriate ceremonies and observances in which all people may join in appreciating law enforcement officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities and, in so doing, have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. Congratulations and thank you for all you do. Chief. And our second proclamation this evening, by the American Public Works Association to declare the week of May 21 through 27, 2023 as National Public Works Week. Anyone from Public Works want to speak? Mr. Schick.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for this recognition. Every single day, every single resident, every single visitor, every single Moline employer and their employees benefit and use the services that are provided by Public Works. They turn on the water, close out the drain, they utilize the streets and paths as they travel to and fro, and the list goes on and on from there. We have amazing employees in the utilities division or department, the engineering department, as well as what is the Public Works department, that are proud to serve this community, help them live their days as cleanly and as efficiently and effectively as they possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you. Proclamation reads, whereas Public Works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Moline. And whereas these infrastructure facilities and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of Public Works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in Moline to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of Public Works and Public Works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2023 marks the 63rd annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association / Canadian Public Works Association. Now, therefore, I, Sangeeta Rayapati, Mayor of Moline, do hereby proclaim May 21 through 27, 2023 as National Public Works Week. Thank you so much. Here you go. Okay, is there any public comment this evening, Chief? Yes. All right, would you like to come to the podium for public comment? You have 3 minutes to speak.
I'm just sitting in.
Oh, that's no problem then.
I'm sorry, I
That's a
apologize.
sign-in for public comment.
I'm
No problem.
sorry.
You're welcome. Welcome to join us. Thank you very much. Any questions on the agenda? Seeing none, we move to our informationals. 7.1, Evergreen Class and Comp Study. Ms. Miller.
Good evening. Tonight I'm bringing before you an informational on the Evergreen Class and Comp Study. The previous Class and Comp Study for the city was completed in 2017. However, it was never fully implemented. It was implemented for non-union in 2018, in 2020 for UAW, for AFSCME in 2021 in a modified format, and never for police and fire. Having had difficulties recruiting well-qualified individuals for certain positions and in retaining our valuable staff, the city determined a need to verify its competitiveness in the job market. The Class and Comp project was presented and approved by council and is included in the budget. The city has issued an RFP in May of 2022, and Evergreen was selected out of the respondents. The study kicked off in September of 2022, and I'm going to invite Rob Williamson up from Evergreen to tell you about the process and the findings. And if council is supportive of the recommendations that are presented, we'll be bringing forward a resolution for adoption. Thank you. Rob?
Thanks.
Tyler, welcome.
Wow, they even gave me a clicker. Good to go. Thank you, Madam Mayor, council, staff, attendees. It is so good to be back in Moline. It was a few months back that I had the opportunity to come visit here, and people are nice, the food's good, the weather's been great, and I just want to tell you, I have stimulated your local economy. All right? Today I found out that, when the last time I flew in was a Sunday, and I had heard a friend of mine had been here, and he said, you got to stop at this real old ice cream shop that's downtown, right? It's like, yes, I love ice cream, so I'm going to go get my milkshake, and on Sunday they were closed. And so today I got to go into what they told me was a 115-year-old ice cream establishment. Candy establishment. Yeah, right down the street, and probably had one of the best milkshakes ever. So thank you very much for that. So we are going to go through some of the particulars, and we'll get into detail and explanation. We'll have plenty of time for question and answers afterwards, but I wanted to tell you before we got started that you have a heck of a team here. And that was very clear to me when we had outreach, and I was the one that came here to do the in-person outreach and had the opportunity to listen to your employees. They care passionately about the goings-on here, and you're going to see that show up with the employee participation numbers that I'm going to show you. But they ask tough questions. Your leadership team, Leah and Bob, asked tough questions and challenged us along the way, and we feel like we've got a good product ultimately to show you. Let's see if we can. Hey, look at that. So we're going to go through the study process. We're going to talk a little bit about the current conditions that you had when we began the engagement, your compensation philosophy, the classification review, that's your internal equity. That's what you do internally, right? And then the compensation review is how we compare you to market, because ultimately we wanted to create a proposed pay plan for you that would be fair internally, but competitive externally. And then we'll get to the slide that everybody wants to see, and that's the money slide, where we figure out how we're going to pay for this recommendation, right? So it started way back in September, October time period with a kickoff call, and we did project manager interviews, and then, as I said, we took a look at your current conditions, your 47 grades and your current pay plan, everything that goes into the blocking and tackling of paying folks here. And then we went on to the external analysis, which is that market salary study. Kept on going through until we got to the implementation and reporting phase, which is where we are now. The remaining steps that we have are we need to make sure that we have legally compliant job descriptions, and that the job descriptions for anything we've updated, well, they match those essential functions. The job description matches the work that we're doing. And we heard during outreach that there was a few instances where maybe right now, and that's normal, their pay plans are going to evolve, positions are going to evolve, or maybe the job description doesn't exactly match the essential functions. We're going to take care of that for you. We'll have a draft and a final report that'll memorialize everything we've done, and we'll submit that for you. The Job Force Manager training is to work with your staff on ongoing maintenance of your pay plan to where you don't fall behind and you stay current with the marketplace. What we saw is those 47 pay grades, pay ranges, that's your minimum to maximum salary ranges, around 40 to 50%. And the progression between grades varied from 5 to 17%. And we had 5 distinct categories where we had non-union, we had ASME, we had UAW for the library employees, police, fire, and so we had those different categories. Here's what we found when we analyzed and split your employees up into 4 quadrants. And you'll see that there is 43% in that first quartile. Why is that important? Because it kind of let us know that you probably have some wage compression going on. Yes, we heard that when we went through outreach. So what's wage compression, Rob? For those of you that need a quick review, I'll just share it with you. Let's say I got hired here today and I'm making $20 an hour. And Madam Mayor, you started working here 5 years ago and you're making $20 an hour. That's why that 43% in the first quartile, that can happen, where you'll have a starting salary range of maybe it's $20 an hour, and then you raise those ranges. You do a cost of living adjustment, and you raise everybody's ranges, so the minimum goes up. And then the next year you hire somebody else, and they're hired in at that higher minimum, right? So now you have 2 people that are basically paid at the same amount. So that wage compression is where you have employees that are making at or the same as a tenured employee above them. What we want to get to and what we hope to share with you as a good implementation option toward the end of the presentation is how we can separate and create a healthy separation again between employees in your plan to create that internal equity to where you'll have a fair pay plan as well as one that's competitive. You see that we want to be competitive to market. You want a pay plan that's going to be fair. You want one that's going to be fiscally responsible. I mean, you have constituents that have entrusted you with their tax dollars, and you want to make sure that you're being fiscally responsible with them. Open range plan, meaning it's not a step plan. Open range plan, providing some flexibility between those pay ranges to move employees based on tenure and performance and whatever collective bargaining agreements you may have. This is something that I wanted to highlight because when I talked to your team when I was here, I said, look, I'm going to at some point be speaking to your elected representatives. And there's going to be an opportunity where they always want to know, hey, we heard you came here, what was the participation like, right? And there are some clients where unfortunately I have to tell that board, I had a client in Florida, they had about a 35% participation rate. And the whole dynamic of the room changes. You can see the participation rate from your team was well above the national average. I'm in 9 different states right now with projects, probably more than 35, 36 projects. We usually average around 70% participation. Your employees are at 84% participation. Your supervisors at 92%, and we captured almost 100% of every job title you have in your pay plan. That is extraordinary. It really mattered to your folks. And so I know it matters to you. That employee participation piece really leads into the compensation portion. We had target respondents. On the right-hand side, you'll see all of the municipalities, the approved market peers that we went out to market to compare you to. How did we come up with that list? It started with outreach. One of the questions I asked the focus groups, supervisor focus groups, non-supervisor focus groups, department director focus groups, who do you think we should be comparing Moline to? And we got feedback, and it started there. It actually started back on the kickoff call. When I asked in the kickoff call, who do you think we should be comparing you to? We looked at the previous study. We did our own research, and then ultimately we ended up with an approved list. Of those benchmark classification, those 80 job titles that we compared to market, you averaged a very robust 8.5 peer responses for each job title. That's very high. That means that we feel as though we have a very defensible market position for you. I went and broke it down separately by category so that you could get a little bit more granular look at how these different groups are performing relative to market. And one of the things that jumped out to me initially was police and fire being below the minimum range. Well, why is the minimum average important? The minimum average is important because that's that recruitment piece. What's that starting salary you're paying people? What's the minimum salary you're paying in each one of those pay ranges? And if the minimum salary is below market, you're probably going to notice that you're having a tough time filling those positions. You might have a higher vacancy rate. You might have a higher turnover rate. And why should you care about turnover? Because typically turnover is about 1.5 times the annual salary of the position that you have to replace. You have that operational cost, you have the vacancy cost, you have the training cost, you have the onboarding cost. All of that adds up to a lot of money, right? Well, you're about 10% behind, 9% behind at the minimum for police. Now, when you get to the midpoint and maximum, the midpoint and maximum of the range really represent a more tenured employee. By the time someone gets to the midpoint of their salary range, they've got a little bit of experience behind it. They didn't just start their job. They have a little bit of understanding behind it. But those positions are highly coveted in a highly competitive market, which is what we found ourselves in the last 2 years. And so if you're another entity, if you're another city, if you're another neighboring jurisdiction, those are going to be the positions you're going to want to come after. So while the minimum part of the pay range is very important for recruitment, the middle of the pay range and the higher end of the pay range is vitally important for retention. And if I had to say which one's more important, I would always say retaining those high-quality employees that you have. You have invested tens of thousands of dollars in time into those employees. They know your city. They know your constituents. They know the service levels and the expectations better than anyone. So any of these here that you see that you're behind the market on, The library employees were the ones at the midpoint that were the farthest behind market. They were small but mighty. Key recommendations. We wanted to start the minimum pay at $20 an hour. So the cost projections that you're going to see are with a starting salary that is a minimum of $20 an hour. We feel like that would move you into a much more competitive position. What we do when we build a pay plan, y'all, is we take those classifications and we slot those classifications competitively to market and internally equitable. And then we take the people, the employees that occupy those individual job titles, and we move them into their respective pay range based on a certain methodology. And the methodology that we're recommending to placing these employees in is called hybrid parity. So what is hybrid parity? Well, one of the key things that we feel you need to solve as an issue that you need to solve is that wage compression, okay? And so we need to be able to move employees either based on time that they've spent in their current job title, or time that they've spent overall in service to Moline, or hybrid parity, which is a combination of the both, okay? What hybrid parity does is it moves employees in their pay range based on their hybrid years. So it gives them 100% credit for the time that they've spent in their current job title. And then it gives them 50% credit for any remaining time that they've spent with Moline, regardless of the job that they've been in. So if someone just got promoted, they're going to get time, 100% credit for that time that they've been in their new position. And then if they've worked another 9 years with the city, they're going to get half credit for any of that time that they've spent, regardless of what job they've been in. It's a true hybrid of the two. And it allows you to move employees and place them with a healthy separation between employees based on time in class and overall time that they've spent in the organization. $1.39 million is the overall cost. This is base salary adjusted for cost of living, 5% of payroll. You'll notice the number of employees adjusted is 233, so you're probably wondering what's the number that aren't getting adjusted. 154, somewhere around that area, around 150. Now, what does it mean if somebody is or is not getting adjusted? That just means that in a market that's moving quickly, that example that I provided earlier where maybe I'm the one that just got hired, well, right now in a fast-moving labor market, to get me in the door, you probably had to pay me market rate, right? Not a lot of people are going to come in and come to work for less. The problem is, if I'm paid at market rate, that created that compression, but it also means I'm probably not going to be recommended for an adjustment. I'm already paid competitive to market. So in the pay plan that we're recommending to you, not everyone will be recommended for an adjustment. It's not about personalities, it's not about performance, it's about moving employees into the competitive pay plan based on time in class and time in tenure, okay? And yeah, now I'd love to answer any questions that you might have. Yes, I know that's a lot of information.
No, I thank you very much. It's extremely helpful, and the way you've clearly laid it out for us, I thought was helpful. I'm happy to entertain questions from the council. I did have one question. Do you have a slide here about a percentile, like compared to other cities where we landed? Did I read it like 60th percentile or something?
Yes, we put you at the 60th percentile of the market, that bullet underneath there. Which
yes,
basically means if you have 10 jurisdictions that we're comparing you to, there's only 4 that would pay more than you.
Okay, so what I'm asking for is a little perspective, because in my field, being in the 60th would be kind of like, okay, we're doing all right, but we got a ways to go to really work on that recruitment and retention. I'm curious about what does that mean? I mean, that's
a great question, Mayor.
In this field of municipal work.
Yeah, I mean, to put it in context, what I would say is that probably 75% of the clients that I work with were at the 50th percentile.
Okay.
So I know in the private sector, you might think, if we want to separate ourselves, we want to be a Google, we're going to pay at the high end of the range, and everybody's going to get free food, and we're all going to get 3 months off a year, and all that good stuff. In the public sector, it doesn't necessarily work out that way, right?
Right. but let me just get that in my brain. So in your work, 75% of the clients you work with are only in the 50th percentile.
We always start at the 50th percentile of the market. Now, I have one client that's in the metro Georgia area that I'm working with that they told me they wanted to be at the 90th percentile. They wanted to set the market. It is a high net worth community that has a significant level of expectations. That is unusual. I represent that as the far end of the spectrum.
Yeah, got it.
Then I have other communities, which I'm going to, that are about an hour and a half south of Atlanta, that are 14,000 population, and they told me, we're going to struggle to get to that 50th percentile, because they're fiscally constrained and they might have a different set of priorities. But on average, most of the clients I deal with, the market results we're going to return are going to be at the 50th percentile.
Okay, that's very helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
Ms.
Just a footnote to
Mr.
that.
Vitas and then-
Just a footnote, we are at the 55th percentile right now under the old plan.
Okay, so this
So
would
everybody
bring,
knows
the
where
hybrid
we're at.
parity would bring us to the 60th, or,
Yes, it would make you competitive to market at the 60th percentile at the day of implementation.
okay.
And that's a very good point to bring up, is that I think the last study, the council maybe settled at the 55th percentile. And something I'd like to add to that 60th percentile piece is every market is different, right? And sometimes you have to be above the 50th percentile if you want to be competitive. And I think here, the market is telling you that. Part of it is wages, absolutely, okay? And you're going to get that fixed. But part of it is making sure that the wages you're paying are at a certain level, too.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Schmidt and then Mr. O'Brien.
So you have on here that from the review and the target respondents that they're then adjusted for cost of living. So obviously some of these cities are facing different pressures. They're larger. Some are located closer to the Chicago metro area, which would be putting on different pressures. I mean, how much does that cost of living truly adjust for that? Because I don't imagine it can be like one-to-one, especially looking at like Crystal Lake as an example of one that I imagine is much on that higher end because of its location and because of its proximity there. But then, does it truly capture the cost of living versus that expectation of service? I'm trying to get a frame of reference, coming back to that percentage and understanding 60 that right place to be.
It gives us a way, comparing base salary when we adjust it for cost of living, it gives us a way to compare maybe one of those markets that's in that metro area that you could compare to, which for director level positions or higher level positions, or for first responder positions where they're having more days off and they're willing to take on a longer commute because they're not coming in every day, they could be competition for you. And so we use Coley.org. They've been around since I think the 50s, and their cost of living adjustment goes down to a granular level of the cost of a dozen eggs and a gallon of milk. I mean, it covers the gamut, right? And so we set Moline as the benchmark at 100, and then everybody else is adjusted off of that. And, it's a combination of art and science, but at least it gives us a way to even some of those out.
Thank you.
To where we get to what we feel is a more defensible market position.
Thank you, that's helpful. Mr. O'Brien.
Just on average, if we start people out at, the minimal pay, the $20 an hour, do you have any idea how long that, on average with the city, I'm assuming you've done this with the other cities, how long does that how long do they stay at that level? Is it usually like a year, 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, that's an outstanding question, because how are you going to move employees along in their career, right?
Yeah.
And we have some that they'll bring everybody in at the minimum, and then they don't progress those employees within their range. They just give cost of living adjustments. So there's nothing tied to performance. There's nothing tied to merit. And when you do that, it makes it very difficult to move employees, take care of any progression or wage compression that might come up. And it also makes it very difficult to reward a high performer and move up and out a poor performer. So typically it's a combination of the two. In answer to your question, it would move an employee. Typically they would get a little bit of a percentage increase based on tenure. I have successfully stayed employed at Moline another year. I'm going to get an increase, whether I'm a good performer or not. I've stayed employed, you've chosen to allow me to continue working here, I'm going to get something. But then there's that other piece that we feel is very important, and it's some type of performance metric that's tied to outcomes, typically ones that you as policymakers set. We want to see the city accomplish X, Y, and Z, and we're going to have our employees have a performance-based system that would factor into that. So it's typically a combination of those two, and you're somewhere between, you know, as low as 2.5% and as high as 5.5%, 6% between the combination of those two on average. It varies, but I would say at a minimum you need to be giving employees increases on a yearly basis. If you're not, you're going to be falling behind the market, because the market continues to move. Certainly not at the level that we've seen it move in the last 3 years, by 6, 7, 9% in some cases. But we have some clients where they'll implement a study, then they won't give an increase for another 3 years and wonder why after 3 years they're behind the market again. So it's very important to progress your employees on an annual basis on tenure and merit.
Thank you. Ms. Castro.
I had a similar question to that. For those folks who are not set to get a bump, so those are people who are like at or above that minimum, correct?
Yes.
So for those, is there a plan or is there any reason to like slow the acceleration along that pay scale for those employees? I've worked at places where, you know, if you are at or above that minimum, they kind of decelerate your pay raise or your pay increase to kind of keep you within that category.
No, and I've seen that before as well. What I would say is if you have the money to do it, that you would implement a cost of living adjustment of some kind to where maybe all employees could realize some increase along with the hybrid parity implementation that would handle the wage compression piece. But once the implementation, whatever you choose, once that takes effect, then you're going to have hopefully a way to do it where it's based on years of service and it's based on merit, and you're going to be moving employees, and those that are currently at or ahead of market, as you continue to give those increases to cost of living, the ranges are going to catch up to them, and then they will realize those increases in the future. But bottom line, if an employee is paid at $35,000, let's say, and the market says they should be paid $30,000, then along with another aspect of that is also where are they currently in their plan as well. In other words, how do they rank with other employees?
Mr. Mercedes, did you have your hand up really? Okay, Mr. Timmy and then Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a quick question about the two figures, the 1.4 and the 650. Is that salary only, or does that include pension contributions, annual bonuses? Because that any increase is going to exponentially affect those. So I just want to know what we're talking about.
The number you see there is base salary adjusted for cost of living. So that's base salary. It's not total comp.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt.
Following up on a lot of the questions over here, a lot of the alterations in compensation on a long-standing basis, and this is more for our team, they don't matter for most employees because those will be dictated by the union contracts. Truthfully, any sort of merit-based system would be then turned around and applied only to that non-union section, which is 60? Okay.
And this union agreement dictates what some of the ranges are going to be.
Right.
So, yeah. Like for some of the midpoint progression, we went off the active collective bargaining agreement for some of those, even though we might have recommended something different. We adhered to what the agreement was that's currently in place.
Okay. Anything further from the council? Okay, thank you so much. I think that, Mr. Butas, do you have what you need from the council and Ms. Kostopoulos to bring this back? Or do you need further discussion from the council?
I have a question, and I think it's probably the most important question based upon how this model was done and this work was concluded, is that when we started the process, the pay plan, as Leah explained, it took years to implement, and it was at the root of a lot of discord within the organization. And I'm just laying that out there so that you're aware of that. There was a lot of discord that happened after the last study, and I wasn't here, so I can't speak to all the little elements that created the discord. Ultimately, the council, though, decided that it was going to be a plan at 55% of the market, and this is at 60. So the question is are you comfortable being at the 60th percentile as opposed to where we are today at the 55th? Because that will guide ultimately the work that Evergreen will have to do to bring back a final document for our review.
Mr. Schmidt?
I am comfortable at the 60th percentile. If we were to look to anything, I would be more interested in talking about increasing rather than decreasing that. I think for us to maintain a position where we can hire and retain employees, we need to make that a priority. I think that was a big part of completing a new class and comp study because the last one was such a mess. One other item that I would be curious and would ask that our staff look into in whatever way is best appropriate would be to understand where do our bargaining units stand in relation to the class and compensation study, because I think that's an important thing to have an understanding, and if there's concerns about specific ways that would be implemented, I'm not interested in going in and trying to redefine classes, changing things around, moving jobs around. I think that is how you break it and how we create these problems down the road. But the few levers we do have to give guidance, I'd be curious on where that falls and how that falls for our units. And I think without that information in my hand, I'd not be ready to vote on it.
So do the work up front to talk with the interested parties versus make a decision
Just
and
us
then.
pass it and then we
Got
can
it.
find out where we're
Got it.
Mr. Timian?
Thank you. I would echo 60% is where I'm comfortable. Primarily, we're not an island here in the Quad Cities. We're not Chicago, that there's no other game in town. They're not, but okay, they have neighbors too. But this is a highly competitive market, both in Illinois and Iowa. There's a lot of municipalities. I think we have to edge out competition in order to attract the best talent. So that's why I'm definitely in the 60%.
Yes, Mr. Rozak?
Yes, I would like to echo the same thing. I would like to have 60% because the most important thing for any organization to retain is skilled worker. You can hire new people, but the work will not be the same. So in order to retain it, 60 percentile is the idea is good, and progressively, there should be increase.
Okay.
Otherwise, people will be interested in their job and they will quit.
They'll job shop. Yes, anyone else? Yes, Ms. Christopoulos?
So we just want to clarify what you are asking for, other person, Schmidt. Are you asking for comps or are you asking for us to actually go to the unions and talk about this?
I would like to know where our unions stand
All right.
on the issue.
So,
And good, bad, where that falls. I mean, I recognize we may not be able to step into a full negotiation standpoint, and I'm not asking
Yeah.
to go that far. But I don't think I'd be comfortable going forward without an understanding of where our initial thoughts are on, is this something that would like to be accepted?
all right.
I think it would be a mistake for us to go forward and vote on something without having that information, at least from a preliminary standpoint, that might take us to negotiation.
So maybe you're looking for us to convene meetings for feedback.
I think that would be excellent, yes.
Yeah.
I'm seeing nodding heads, so there's a fair amount of consensus on that. So we'll look forward to when that can come back. We know we're working on a timeline here. Thank you so much for all of this helpful information.
Thank you,
Very
everyone.
much
We're grateful
appreciate
for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so we move to 7.2, Chapter 22, Offenses Miscellaneous Amendments. Ms. Christopoulos and Chief Galt?
Yes. So, for all of you who are new, and some of you who may have forgotten, we have been methodically reviewing each chapter of your code, and with the primary goal of just updating, revising to bring them current, making changes such as that, not substantive changes. So today we have chapter 22 first, which was primarily reviewed and updated by Chief Galt as it relates to offenses, and then we will move to chapter 26 next. So I think you have all had a chance to look at this. We're open to questions. Again, we're not looking to make any substantive changes here, just to bring the language current.
So I just, at this point, want to say that I wasn't able to forward this information you got from Attorney Fox. After I had posed just a few questions online, I have informed the council that I had some questions, but
I can go over it.
yeah, you've got it in front of you, and because we're not voting on anything tonight, you certainly can take a look at that email soon.
Sure. Yeah, so appreciate the time, Your Honor, to go over Chapter 22. I know it is a large chapter, but what we found when, I don't want to take all the credit for this. I have a large team of officers that divided this chapter up. Several of them are here tonight to help me with any questions that you might have. But we divided it up and went through every section, and what we found was a lot of this ordinance was out of date. Many of the ordinances in Chapter 22 mirror state statute. So you might wonder, first question you might have, if you haven't been around municipal ordinances for police, is why in the world would you have the same state statute as the municipal ordinance? The reason that we have that is it is an alternative to a state arrest. So many of the crimes that we have can be handled with an ordinance ticket, which are handled as a civil remedy rather than a criminal offense that goes into a state court. So we need a lot of these that also have a state remedy, meaning that they are arrested and jailed and go in front of a judge. We need a remedy that we can use as an alternative to that. So those people face a civil fine only. There is not an imprisonment section to a civil action in a municipal court. And this is diverted into a completely different system that is heard by a hearing officer in a similar format that still protects someone's rights and due process. We still have to present that stuff, but it is a lesser penalty and certainly holds people accountable, but maybe doesn't impact them the same way that a jailable offense would. So one of the first things that I want to point out and show you how we needed to update this, and I'm not going to go through this line by line, but in the very first section, 22-1100, that strikeout under penalty says that it's punishable by imprisonment in a place other than a penitentiary for a term not to exceed 6 months. That is why this is so outdated, as this was 20 years, 30 years ago, something that was allowed to do in a municipal jail. In fact, I think one of our staff members is working out of the municipal jail here in City Hall.
There'll be several more too.
Yeah. So if you want to see that jail cell in City Hall, you can go see that. We don't do that anymore. In fact, we do not jail people at the police department. We don't have those facilities anymore to hold people. So that is an example throughout this section of how dated the document was that we needed to update it. Other sections I just want to point out to on kind of a high level, 22-1102 curfew. Curfew had some significant gaps as compared to updated statute. You can see that some of that statute, you can see like revisions on ordinances will show you when they were last updated. Some of these are over 20 years old that had not been updated. And the curfew statute has been drastically changed over the years. I'm sure some of you follow along some of the changes in juvenile law. Many of these things have been updated to reflect current times of movement of juveniles is much different than it used to be 20, 25, 30 years ago. And accordingly, there are several curfew defenses that needed to be added in there that are allowed under state law. We wanted to mirror in that. And then again, an enforcement section that is also in state law that we have to ask appropriate questions and do a little bit more work other than just kind of the prima facie evidence that the juvenile was out past curfew. So these are some of the things that aren't substantive changes, but they're bringing the code current in relation to state law. Another section 22-1400 is the truancy section. Truancy was an issue that was largely handled by police officers for probably 100 years. When I started in law enforcement, was nothing for a police officer to get a phone call or a call dispatch, and we would literally drag kids out of bed and take them to school. That is a practice that no longer is allowed. In fact, policing is out of the truancy business for the most part, and that is completely handled by the school districts on a school discipline basis. So this statute, and you will see, has a large amount of new text in it, and that is all new current law to reflect that. And really some of this reflects some responsibility on the parents and less responsibility on the juveniles. We're certainly not trying to create that school to prison pipeline aspect. So for the most part, since 2019, law enforcement has been completely out of the truancy business. And so we haven't enforced this by law. It's actual case law that they changed this in the state. We haven't enforced this for 4 years. So we need to update that section. Section, I can't remember writing, I think it's 8100, is the new authority to impound fleeing vehicles article. Now this is a section that's being completely reworked and moved. It's being moved. So that's why it's at the back. You'll also see that we are pretty much eliminating the Car Owner Responsibility Act. This was a statute that or an ordinance that was put into place 15 plus years ago in Moline. There are several municipalities that have a core ordinance, Rock Island and East Moline particularly, and as you know, I came from East Moline. We did core quite a bit there, but Moline has never enforced the core ordinance, and so we need to get it off the books. It's been in existence, and we've never implemented. I have no plans to implement that, and in reality, there are several offenses in the core statute that I think are overly burdensome to our citizens that become a heavy fine and really are not effective other than a revenue generator for the city. I don't think that's really the business that we need to be in. But of particular interest to us in law enforcement is the ability to deal with some of these fleeing vehicles. For the most part, our law enforcement has strict police pursuit policy for risk management purposes. We have to weigh the cost benefit of chasing vehicles and the safety for both our staff members and the general public. But fleeing vehicles is a problem. And so we want to be able to not only hold people accountable by some significant fines for vehicles that flee from police officers on a lawful traffic stop, but also be able to tow those vehicles. If they flee, abandon the vehicle, and then we can tow that and do an investigative hold and then investigate that. And it also allows us to disengage from that pursuit, allow that vehicle to escape. We can seize it and then continue the investigation, still hold them accountable, and manage the risk as well. So this is a lengthy section. It's being carved out of Cora being eliminated, moved, and then being reworked. I'm going to give Officer Eric Wells, who's here tonight, a lot of credit for working on this and some significant work. And this will, I think, give the police department an appropriate tool for us to deal with those issues. You'll also see a large amount of strikes in sections revolving around penalties. You're probably very confused about that. If you take the time to read the penalties were all over the board. It was a hodgepodge of penalties in each section, very inconsistent. I think over time, as sections were reworked, penalties were put in for each one of those. This was largely handled by Attorney John Fox, who went through that at the recommendation of our staff, who said that this could be streamlined, consolidated, and improved upon. And so he's eliminated all the penalty provisions in the individual statutes, moved those to an appropriate consolidated section, and then reference certain sections like, 1100 to 1140. This applies here. A youth alternative program for community service, et cetera. And you can read those there, but we think that that's a good improvement to the ordinance. Another significant change is the tobacco section. Sergeant Joe Cleaver is here. He worked significantly on this section. This is a very outdated section. It did not reflect current tobacco products. As you know, tobacco products have evolved rapidly, and we have not in the ordinance. And so you'll see a new terminology of electronic nicotine delivery systems, which largely covers all the new products like vapes and things like that. And if you know, the school districts are having a lot of problems with those products. So this updates the language there. I do want to point out in our review today, Sergeant Cleaver and I did discover a section got left out of that. And so we need to fix that. And it's subsection O. So we will notify Attorney Fox. It's in the draft, but it got carved out of there. Jody, you have that section there. And so what we want to do is also carve out a specific section about offenses on school grounds. So if you're familiar with the ProPublica article that did a lot of research and included Moline on some data where they were critical of police officers issuing tickets on school grounds, it did really reflect our practice. And so we want to be clear in our ordinance that we are writing tickets, and this is our practice. So it's really just defining it for transparency purposes. We're really writing that ticket on the third offense of a student on school grounds. The current practice is that the first two offenses are handled by the school. They are handling through school discipline on a progressive discipline process. But there are times when those are not working, and then we move to the third offense. The police officers then called and asked to issue the citation. So it is not issuing it on the first offense. They're trying alternatives. And then there still is another provision of classes and things like that. And that's in the statute where the student can mitigate that. But subsection O is titled Offenses on School Grounds. Any person violating these sections on school grounds shall be first administered by the school through the course of school discipline policies. Any violation of the section shall not apply for the purposes of the city ordinance until school discipline has been applied twice, meaning that the ticket would apply on the third offense. So we just wanted to clarify that in the ordinance. It also helps for continuity as staff members change and obviously hearing officers change. With revisions to sections including endangering the life and health of a minor, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, parental responsibility, laser pointers, and criminal trespass to land. I won't go through those specifically, but there's a lot of red lines, and those are complete updates to mirror state statute. All of those statutes have changed, the law has changed, and our ordinances now will be consistent with that legal language. Intimidation, harassment by phone, harassment by electronic communications, and minors involved in electronic dissemination of visual depictions have been carved out as standalone sections. Previously, it was very confusing how those were in the sections, and so our staff recommended that those be carved out so that they could be cited individually. And then we also updated some outdated language, particularly around mentally disabled individuals, to update that to more appropriate current terminology. So that is kind of a high-level overview. I won't burden you going line by line, but as Margaret said, this was intended to be cleanup. We're not adding any significant offenses or anything like that. It's largely, as I described, those 7 highlights there.
Mr. Timian.
Margaret, there's in terms of the enforcement and revocation of liquor licenses as a punishment, it says the mayor. Should it say the liquor commissioner?
Well,
Who is our liquor
would-
commissioner?
Yeah,
But, I
that
mean,
would be appropriate.
Yeah,
Well, I'm sorry, you're the
that
legal
would be.
counsel.
be my guest.
No, it's just if I understand it, it's because I can appoint someone to be the liquor commissioner.
So in this case, that would just be a catch. It would be safer. Okay. Thank you.
Keep going with that.
I don't know how to quote this stuff, but under suspension, revocation of license, fines, costs. And it's a, I can't find it for you.
That must be in the tobacco section?
It's by vending machines, actually.
Okay.
But,
You have a
Yeah,
I-
page number.
section.
oh,
Okay, well, and it's mayor, and we want to change it to
liquor commissioner.
Okay.
Anything further from the council? Questions? Yes, Mr. Schmidt?
I promise to limit myself to only one unusual question. I'm just, section 221108, swimming in rivers prohibited. I have a really hard time understanding what that second paragraph even means. Like, the first one seems clear. If there's a sign posted you can't swim on the public property, that's fine. And I'm just wondering if it's possible to clean up that paragraph to just be a little more clearly stated.
Subsection B there, is that
Yes.
okay.
Like, I think that's just saying that, well, actually, I'm not really sure.
So, I wonder if this, there must be a reason for this. I wonder if are there people on the Rock River that have access? Does anybody know, like Public Works that have legal access? I don't know. I'll ask Attorney Fox to see if he can.
Yeah, and just because, if it's just trying to say that if you have a contract, like I know there is like the boathouse that's down by Bass Street Landing, and we're just trying to protect like contracts like that would allow it, or if someone had a contract with the Parks Department to launch boats, even a event permit or something. If that's what we're trying to do, or if that's something else. But it just seems like a really complicated way to say it.
So it does look like there's a reference maybe here. I'll see if we can research the ordinance. It looks like it was enacted in 2000, so 96 and 2000, so there must be some history there.
Okay.
So I do appreciate the inclusion of both our great rivers.
Yeah.
Thank you. If there's nothing further from the council, we'll move to 7.3, chapter 26.
This is generally the section that kind of governs the creation and structure of the Moline Police Department. There is no substantive changes at all in here. However, I will direct you to 2103, although I know you probably think that I run the fire department because of all the work that I do there. It is now unlawful. So we do need to strike your ability to promote to appoint me as the director of public safety, although I will continue to do that. There's some other just legal terminology in this section, updating some of the titles that have changed in the city throughout. And then the only other large section that we struck was rules and regulations 2314. 11 and 12, where you see that police officers are mandated to note street and sidewalk obstructions, defects. Same thing in section 12, where they are required to report these obstructions of public streets and sidewalks. It's just outdated language, again, from probably 30, 40 years ago. If you know the history of policing, back in the 1800s and 1900s, police officers turned on and off gas lamps. They were the night watch, right? And that's actually what they did, was they would go out and turn on gas lamps. So they had a lot of these duties. My police officers are not inspecting sidewalks. If we have an incident, we certainly work very closely with Public Works, and there's an appropriate way to do that, but mandating it by ordinance is an outdated practice. So we're just really striking that section to bring it up to current rank or current practice. The rest of it is just typographical errors that are fixed by the.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks to all the staff for the work on that. We'll look forward to that coming back to a council meeting because we've had substantive discussion here. Got it. Thank you. So I'll now close out the cow and call our regular council meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, do you have an invocation, Alderperson?
Yes.
All right, go ahead. Would you like us to stand? That's fine.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for our administration, mayor, and city council members this evening. Grant us the power and grace to bring truth, justice, and stability to the decisions we are making today. Give us the power to do what is right and to rule in fairness for all our citizens. May our community be known for its justice and equality forevermore. Amen.
Roll call, please.
Alderperson Murphy,
Here, present.
Macias,
Present.
Razak,
Present.
Timian,
Present?
Finch,
Present.
O'Brien,
Present.
Castro,
Present.
Schmidt.
Present.
Your Honor, I request approval of Committee of the Whole and Council Minutes of May 2nd, 2023, Committee of the Whole and Council Minutes of May 9th, 2023, and appointments made during Committee of the Whole on May 16th, 2023. Consent agenda resolutions. Item 13.1, a resolution authorizing the approval of a resolution for improvement under the Illinois Highway Code for motor fuel tax, section number 22-00290-00 engineering services for 7th Avenue reconstruction for the amount of $157,061. Item number 13.2, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to acceptance of a sanitary sewer and drainage easement with the Moline Valley School District number 40 for the property located at 4205 48th Street, commonly known as Butterworth School. Item number 13.3, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a contract with Walter D. Loud Incorporated for project number 1417, 45th Street reconstruction for the amount of $665,503.17. Item number 13.4, a resolution granting a revision to a permanent waiver of section 28-3200A and section 35-4218 of the Moline Code of Ordinances and estimated payment into the sidewalk fund in lieu of construction of sidewalk along 10th Avenue for property located at 1002 27th Street, Moline, PIN number 0833407001. Item number 13.5, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to an agreement between the city of Moline and the Board of Education of Moline Coal Valley School District number 40, setting forth the terms for assignment of 4 police liaison officers to Moline schools for the 2023-2024 school year. Item number 13.6, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a lease agreement between the Moline Parks and Recreation Board and the Quad City Sky Raiders for a lease term of April 1, 2023 through April 30th, 2028. Item number 13.7, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement providing for the Rock River Valley Regional Sewage System. Item number 13.8, a resolution authorizing the mayor to make application to enter into an agreement and to execute all necessary assurances and certifications to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for CDBG entitlement funding under Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended of certain projects and programs for fiscal year 2023 and approving projects and program recommendations of the Citizens Advisory Council on Urban Policy for the use of 2023 Community Development Block Grants funds and the 2023 Annual Action Plan, which contains said projects and programs, and authorizing the mayor to implement those approved projects and programs upon the approval of the City of Moline 2023 Annual Action Plan by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and to exercise any and all powers required to obtain such funding and to implement those approved projects.
Your Honor, I move for the approval of consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderperson Timian. Roll call, please.
Alderperson Murphy,
Aye.
Macias,
Aye.
Rasak,
Aye.
Timian,
Aye.
Finch,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Castro,
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays. That motion carries. Now non-consent agenda resolutions. Item 15.1, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute and attest to a contract with Davenport Electric Contract Company for project number 1419, traffic signal improvements at 12th Avenue and 27th Street for the amount of $93,874.75.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Alderperson Timian, seconded by Macias. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderperson Murphy?
Aye.
Macias?
Aye.
Rasak?
Aye.
Timian?
Aye.
Finch?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Castro?
Aye.
Schmidt?
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays, and that motion carries. Item number 15.2, a resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to amend the current agreement with Mission Square Retirement, formerly International City Management Association Retirement Corporation, to include changes to retiree health insurance benefits implemented for IAFF employees hired on or after January 1, 2020.
Motion to approve? Second.
Motion by Schmidt, seconded by O'Brien. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderperson Murphy?
Aye.
Macias?
Aye.
Rasak?
Aye.
Timian?
Aye.
Finch?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Castro?
Aye.
Schmidt?
Aye.
8 ayes, no nays, and that motion carries. That is all I have this evening, Your
All
Honor.
right. Well, I have several things under miscellaneous, some events coming up and just updates from me. This Thursday is the first Bass Street Landing concert, and traditionally myself, or I think last year you may have filled in for me, Mr. Schmidt, have done a greeting to everybody there. And so Mr. Griffith has asked if there's a volunteer for that. I will be out of town, not back quite in time. So if someone wants to do that greeting, it's first come, first serve. Just let me know. And actually copy Eric if you're interested. All it is welcome, we're so glad you're here, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Secondly, on the 17th, I got an invitation from Quad City Christian School. They're doing a ribbon cutting on a new gymnasium that they're building or have built. I think it's have built. So they're hosting a ribbon cutting at 4 p.m. tomorrow. Again, I will be on the road, headed out of town. It's in unincorporated Moline, so I can't say, hey, older person so-and-so, do you want to do this? Please just email me if you're interested in being at that ribbon cutting. It's down behind Target in that area, so it's sort of like between 3 and 5. And lastly, there's a ribbon cutting June 1. Alderperson Macias, who is Mayor Pro Tem that month, cannot go, and I will be headed out to a conference that day as well. Do you remember which organization it was for?
Is it in the downtown area?
Cannot remember.
Yeah. There was like two that.
Anyway, there's a ribbon cutting. We need city representation. So I need someone to step up for that. Hot Works Yoga.
Yoga, that's right.
Yes. So you know what I can do is I will just email that out to everyone because I don't remember the time that it was. So then you can reply and hopefully we'll have someone there. So speaking of those couple dates, I am headed to Madison, Wisconsin tomorrow. I will be on panels at the Mayor's Innovation Project. They have a kickoff meeting for their new mayor's cohort, and I was asked to come speak there, so I'm looking forward to that. And then I'll be at the U.S. Conference of Mayors from the 1st through the 5th. And this year it's in Columbus, Ohio. And I always bring great stuff back, right?
Oh, you bring back a load of good times for us.
But it has been very informative, so I'm looking forward to that. And lastly, speaking of mayoral initiatives and those things, I wanted to touch base on the social isolation, loneliness, and social connection that we talked about last week. I had said that I was going to be on a forum on Friday. I was on that forum. I was the only mayor on the forum out of everywhere. But it worked out really nicely. The group is called the Forum for Social Connection, and they are paired up with the people who have given Surgeon General Vivek Murthy all the research that he based his advisory about social connection and isolation and loneliness on. So I've been invited to speak at that national conference in October. It won't interrupt budget. But we do have things in the works. This is one of my mayoral pillars. You know, we all created the 3 big pillars, and then I've had opportunities and connectedness. So I'll be bringing more, but I'm trying to create an advisory council out of Moliners who can grassroots take what I've been doing for 8 months with Good Gatherings. And if you want to know what that's all about, just find the Facebook group. It's a group, not a page, just called Good Gatherings. You can see what we've been up to, and there's a nice description there. So I wanted to follow up on that. And lastly, our working group on environmental stuff is considering participating in Plastic-Free July, right, Mr. Lodi?
That's correct.
And I did reach out to our friends in Rock Island so far, and I think Mayor Tomes is interested in joining with us, so I'm hoping that we can sort of join forces and take that first step. And those of you who haven't been on council, we had good research back in 2021 about plastics being the biggest pollutant in our water systems, and us really needing to try to minimize our usage of plastics. So see what that can translate into. Yes, Mr. Lodi.
And I was just going to say, Andy's also going to reach out to East Moline and see.
Oh, perfect.
Staff level to see if they have interest.
Okay, I'll reach out to their mayor as well. And that is all I have. Sorry. Ms. Murphy, do you have anything in miscellaneous? Okay. Macias?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Mr. Rosales? Timian?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. I traveled to the California last week. I was in, now I'm drawing a blank, but it's where Silicon Valley is. And
Palo Alto.
Palo Alto, thank you. And I took a 3-mile walk to get to the office from the hotel, just to observe the neighborhood. And this is when I talk about housing, a lot of options. It was really cool. But that wasn't the thing that jumped out to me the most. One of the wealthiest communities in the country had a lot of overhead power lines. And so I mention that because this was such a point of contention about modern cities and what we want to look like. And I just think that it level set a little bit that, no, this is fairly normal, even in very affluent communities where houses cost $3 million for a bungalow, that we're not really that far behind, if at all. And so I just wanted to point that out, and I'm glad to be back. Thank you.
Ms. Finch? Thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
I attended my first Rock Island County Waste Management Agency meeting today. And there was a question that arose about Moline's transfer station. And
We're in a 90-day period of silence.
okay, well, so after 90 days, we're going to have the hearing on it, or?
I can actually speak about that.
Okay.
And there are hearings that are scheduled for the last week of June, which is within the 180-day time frame from the date that they filed until the date that we have to approve things. And that will be a decision council will make after the hearings have been concluded. And your attendance at the hearings is advantageous to you if you're available to attend. There are some daytime hearings, there are evening hearings. And we've laid it out for, I think it's like 3 or 4 days.
And Mr. Silverman sent us an email. Please read that with a fine-tooth comb. It tells you everything you need to know coming up. So we can't talk about anything right now.
Okay, I won't talk about it right now, but where are we at in the 90 days?
We're fine.
Are we in the middle of?
It's not over.
We're good. We're absolutely, everything is
Okay.
on schedule.
All right, well, I'll accept that as an answer, I guess.
We're good.
Also, you can tell me later. I did pick up these handy dandy, probably for the new aldermen and the aldermen that have already been here. Free disposal residential appliances and used tires. You got this number. I will leave some of them here if you guys want to take them, if you get calls from constituents or whatever, you can use that. And I've tried the plastic elimination just at my house, and it's not easy. There's plastic and everything. Razor blades get wrapped in plastic, you know. I mean, I thought I was doing good with just using my recyclable grocery bags and things like that. But boy, everything is wrapped in plastic. I mean, we're really addicted to that stuff. It's horrible. But anyway.
And if I may add, yeah, and a lot of that stuff's not recyclable either. Sort of like deodorant, you think it's plastic, but for whatever reason, if there's residue in some of these things, they're not recyclable. There is a church in the 2nd Ward, I forget which one it is, but it's behind the El Mariachi, and they take a lot of items that you normally can't take into our recycling here, but they're very specific, like toothpaste dispensers. Those can't go in our recycle, but they'll take them and they send them to specific places for recycling. So yeah, I don't know who the people are that gather, but it's in that church right behind El Mariachi.
You guys can talk. I will send out the link, or Mr. Lodi, could you send out the link? Because there's a lot of helpful information, and just so you know what we're talking about with plastic-free.
And one other thing, when was
Yes.
the date that you needed to welcome people to the concert?
This Thursday night. Is it 6 p.m., Mr. Griffin?
Okay.
You're going to be the first one to jump on there?
Okay, yeah, I can.
All right, O'Brien's your guy.
I don't think I have to go to Springfield this weekend. Just found out, so.
All right. Ms. Castro.
Actually, I do have one thing, Your Honor. My husband is part of the Human Rights Commission, and he let me know that on June 17th, there's going to be a community dinner at the Moline Islamic Center, so that if anyone would like to attend, to email Kristen Saunders, and she can get you the information for that.
You mean Amy Saunders?
Yes, sorry.
Got it. No
Amy
problem.
Saunders.
June 17th?
Yes.
It's also the day of the Pride at Bass Street. Got it. Okay. Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Your Honor. I am very, very happy to report as my last act as the City Council's liaison to the Library Board, as I've recently been replaced.
It's okay.
But at the meeting earlier this week or last week, at the last council meeting of the library, they had approved with the plan to move forward with going fine-free for the Moline Library. This is a big deal as far as catching us up to our neighbors. We're the last Quad City to be implementing that. We're moving forward. The library board is wanting to move forward as fast as possible. There are some technical constraints as far as getting it input in the system, but I think they're looking at ways they can still provide that fine-free reality, even if Prairie Cat still will accrue the fines for a short time. You know, this is not about stepping back from that responsibility. You still have to return books. You'll still receive an invoice if you don't return a book within a certain time frame. But it takes away kind of that nickel and diming piece of it that also will ensure that we're not going after people, and that people are not, you know, people who legitimately can't afford to pay those fines will not be kept from borrowing books. This also is something that tends to actually increase the rate of return of items because people are no longer scared to bring them back. So it's a huge, exciting thing. It had been on the docket, and the library board really jumped on that, and they had a long time frame, and they opted to say, hey, let's look for the shortest one possible. So more will be coming on that in the future, but that was the big, exciting news from that.
Great. Anything from you?
Always. No, I'm watching the clock. It's amazing.
I know.
Just a few things. One, we are, Macy and I are working on the strategic plan and the input that we got from council. So we hope that we're bringing that back very, very shortly to you. The other thing is I want to let you know that after a long period of time, the Community Economic Development Department is basically fully staffed with one exception of a newly created position of an Economic Development Manager, which we've had a lot of difficulty recruiting for. We've advertised twice and came up empty both times for that job. So we're looking at ways to get that one filled. But yeah, that department is finally filled after many years of having vacancies. So I expect great projects coming out of there. And that's it for this evening.
I forgot, but I don't know if you have anything, Mr. Dykhuizen, but in case you're wondering about unkempt yards, he gave me an update today that Brad Hellman has issued 80 citations already, but it takes an entire week to get, that people are allowed to have a response to that. And so if you're getting calls from constituents about unkempt lawns, they need to know it does take some time, and there have been quite a few citations given. So just so you know, didn't know if you wanted to add anything, but that, and then, do you want to add anything?
No, that is correct. It would take at least 7 days. Then a contractor is notified to mow, depending on the weather, the quantity, and that was 80 yesterday.
Oh, yes.
So there'll be more coming. And the grass is growing very fast, so it'll just take some time. It's
Got it.
just an annual thing.
And one thing I forgot, I'm reinstituting listening posts. Mr. Waldron and I really could not find the right time with as busy as things got in the first quarter of the year to do that. And for those that aren't familiar, a listening post is simply a community discussion. Sometimes it has a theme, sometimes it doesn't. We tend to have better participation when there is a theme for it. And so if we're coming around the circle, it's Alderperson Schmidt's turn again. And so that'll be advertised. We're going to do that next Tuesday at 6:30 at the Library Gold Room. And our theme will just be, come hear what we talked about at strategic planning, and then, let us know what else is going on. Yes,
Just really real quick update. Moving Moline into the 21st century, the IT department, IT manager, has launched a new chat bot on our website, and the results are already coming in. People have the ability to ask a question, and it is directing them to somewhere on our webpage where the proper answer is. It's in its infant stages, but kudos to those folks for trying to bring us forward. So if you have a question, it learns by the questions that we ask. So when somebody asks that question, if it comes up again, guess what happens? There's an answer. It's there. So if you have any questions, like I told the staff today, take the time to just ask the chatbot a question daily, so that we can get those numbers up and get this thing, smarter than it is now. I know how great it's in now, but we'd like to have it at the doctoral level soon. So.
All right. Thank you so much. Do we have any public comment? Oh, yes, staff, Mr. Reagan-Weller.
I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that the Moline Firefighters Association Local 581 was holding their annual Memorial Day service this Saturday at 9 a.m. at Central Fire Station. The mayor will be speaking, I'll be speaking, and I'm going to extend an invitation to everybody on the panel.
Thank you so much. You have something, Chief?
Not to be
I was worried there for a second that your yard was unkempt. That's where it was headed.
His car is unkempt.
Don't come up in my neighborhood, please.
Just wanted to let you know, Friday, if anybody here is a fan of coffee and/or donuts, please come to Dunkin' Donuts in Adams Cities. Starting at 5 a.m., it is Cop on a Rooftop. So if you could help get us off the rooftop by your donations to benefit Special Olympics, we'd really appreciate that. It's an annual fundraiser, a very good partnership with Special Olympics. It's very successful. We usually raise a lot of money for them. So if you're on your way to work, please stop in and get carbs and caffeine to make your day much better. And then the last thing, just to let you know, on May 23rd, the Police Benevolent Association will begin grave marking for fallen police officers before Memorial Day, and they put out remembrance markings. They'll begin at 7 a.m. at Post Pancake House. Invite up the grave sites and head out to mark those graves for Memorial Day. Thank you.
What date was that for Dunkin' Donuts?
This Friday.
Because I hardly ever go there, but I'll make a special
All
for you
right.
guys, just for the police.
With no public comment, is there executive session?
Is there, Bob? I have nothing.
Okay.
I do have one property acquisition issue, but doesn't have to be tonight. It could wait.
Okay, we'll wait till we're clear on this ahead of time, right?
That's correct. I don't want to surprise you, Mayor.
Exactly. All right, then I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All right, motion by Macias, seconded by Timmy, and all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.